Good evening, everyone, and welcome to 52 Living Ideas. Tonight, we have a very special guest, Tim Holmes, who is joining us, which Jane will introduce in a moment. My name is Evanique, and you're joined by your co-hosts, Tim, Jing, and Joe. Uh, so tonight, I'm just going to go over the format very quickly. Uh, Myself, Joe, and Jing will share briefly what we got from the last time we met last month. Um, and then Jing will introduce Tim, and then Tim will give his presentation, and then we will have a quick Q&A before we go into breakout rooms. And then after that, we will come back, and then we will have takeaways, and then we will end the evening. So right now I have everybody muted, but when it's time for Q&A, I will allow participants to unmute themselves. And this is just for better sound quality, because I know some people are new here to 52 Living Ideas. I'm going to do my best to share some brief rules that we have. Actually, I'll do that a little bit later. But so thank you and welcome. And so I'm going to start off by sharing what I got from our last meetup. Our last meetup, what talked about the why. And we were talking about why do you design your life? So let me start over. The Design Your Life series is based off of using ideas that we have learned from 52 Living Ideas and from presenters like Tim to figure out what how to design our life. And what we talked about at the last meetup was why design your life. Like, what is the purpose of designing your life? And what I got from that meetup was when Jane was talking about look for your why. Like, why are you doing what you're doing? Why are you taking actions that you were taking? What is the purpose of it? And figuring that out. So I think one of the things that I got from Jane's meetup, from when Jane spoke about it, is she talked about 5 moves, thinking 5 moves ahead. And what that allows is that it allows you to be in this sweet spot where you are thinking ahead, but not too much, and you're not overthinking. So I really did enjoy that because I am an overthinker. Um, but it's enough to either, and I'm the type of person that either I overthink or I just don't think about it and do it. It's not something in the middle. So this allowed me when I was applying this month for me to really think about it, um, and plan ahead and plan 5 moves ahead and plan what happens, and also to plan anticipate some things going wrong, because that's what happens. Or as I like to say, anticipate life happening in the middle of your plans and being able to shift, which is another thing that we talked about, is being able um, to shift your plans. Like, you can have a plan that is not going to go according to plan. You're going to have to be able to shift. And that's why I think thinking 5 moves ahead was so great, because it's not advancing too much and you can always change it up. Um, Another thing that Jing talked about was master knowing yourself, and not having a fixed plan, and and that design is a constant process, so that there, to me, I look at it as learning opportunities when things don't work out according to plan. um, so I did enjoy that part, and I have been using that when things don't go according to plan, helping me think about things a little bit ahead. I can anticipate it, and if I don't anticipate it, then it's a learning opportunity, and I'll know it the next time. And then Joe talked about, you know, uh, we did a values clarification exercise, and Joe gave a great example of a person who says that they value their family, but their actions didn't align. That they actually go to the bar every night instead of being with their family. So the question becomes, what do you really value? And we did various exercises in that meetup, and we to talk about how do we determine what our values are. And I think once you determine what your values are, your actions can really come from it. And your values are your values, and it shouldn't be something that other people put on you, and it shouldn't be something that other people want for your life. It should be what you value. And, the exercises really helped me think about, what do I value? And once I got that, um, it was just this past month, I've been able to, you know, look at what I value in terms of work and where I work and like the contribution I want to make to the company. So those are my takeaways. So up next, I have Joe.
Yeah, I'm going to be brief. So yeah, um, just to pick up where Evanique left off a little bit. Yes, the thing that I talked about is values, and the most important part is sometimes values are externally imposed on us. We tend to manage our lives to society's values as opposed to our own values. And the objective of the exercise was to use Socratic questioning to really get to the underlying value that you have. What is the most meaningful thing to you? And this is the reason why I'm so excited about this evening. We have somebody here this evening that not only lives his values, but also questions why we do the things that we do. Gets us to think outside of conventional wisdom. And I'm really excited to hear what Tim has to say and share when it comes to this particular topic, because I really feel like being an artist and in today's world, and how art allows us to design our lives. So I'll leave it there. Thank you for joining us, Tim.
Thank you, Joe. Jane, you're up next.
Yeah, so I'm very excited. Tim is our first speaker for our Design Your Life meetup, monthly meetup. And I think his example really shows how design his life with the value at the core. The more I learn about him, I met him through a Korean meetup, Escapes Korean meetup group. And I also later got a gift from Tim, the art of and it's then I watched the YouTube. The whole idea is so interesting, and how this businessman was traveling around and feel very bored. But then through the art giving, the random act of art is transformed the whole experience. And I mentioned, I went to Europe for the whole month in the summer, and it's really learned the whole history of art, how art transformed from religions to more, modern art to impressionism. And I realized, a lot of art become the rich people's game. It's more like becoming investment and have less and less impact and relevant to people. And I'm really admired artists like Tim reject to play that game. He basically don't want to become the rich people, the investment way of to being part of their investment game. And he want to make the social impact, make the art really relevant to people. And I think this is very critical, how he designed his life around his value, instead of like what people think, just materialize reward or fame. I think this is very inspiring. So I'm very honored to introduce Tim as our first speaker for our meetup series. So Tim, it's your turn to.
Okay, thank you, Jen. What a wonderful introduction. I'm so glad to be a part of this, because you guys are doing exactly what I think we all ought to be doing, and living in a well-examined life. And to me, that's made a huge amount of difference. And so I'm just going to tell you a little bit of my story, and hopefully it will be inspiring, that you can ask some questions. And if we want to dialogue about some of this, feel free to do that. I'm going to share a few pictures of just the kind of work that I do. This is, I'm a sculptor, and I've been making welded sculpture ever since I was about 10 years old, and just grew up with this activity. Sort of, I never thought about it so much as making art as I did just being a kid, just living. And I was able to lead this pretty successful career in the last century. I got quite a bit of exposure and did some projects that took me around the world and got me introduced to a lot of absolutely fascinating people, like, for instance, Archbishop Tutu here. I kind of got a reputation doing these bronze sculptures as awards for peace prizes and that sort of thing. Did one for the UN. I did one for the Physicians for Social Responsibility. I'm trying to get I can't get this strip off the right-hand side, but this was a project that was done for the Tiananmen Square massacre in '89. A bronze piece called China Peace. And it was kind of used as a diplomatic gift by some of the students who had escaped from the Tiananmen Square catastrophe and came to the US and started this organization to get the news back into China about what had really happened. And it turned into what they call the first fax revolution in history. It's a pretty amazing story, because what they did was they wrote a narrative with photos of the massacre and sent it into random fax numbers all over China. And so people were getting these, essentially the news coming through the fax machine all over, in offices all over the country. And of course, the Chinese government was trying to suppress this. Anyway, these are the kinds of projects that I got involved with. Here's the UN Women's Peace Prize that was awarded in 2000. I was very lucky to be able to have this great experience of being able to go all over the world and show these sculptures, exhibit in various places. I actually got to be the first American ever to be invited to exhibit in the Hermitage Museum, which is the biggest art museum in the world in St. Petersburg, Russia. And it's a kind of honor that I don't think I will ever be able to understand. It's just so amazing to have that kind of experience. And I got to go to Russia a couple times, and gosh, I got treated like a superstar over there. But then I quickly realized that having kind of reached that pinnacle of success and notoriety, that wasn't really what made me happy. And I'm trying to get rid of, there we go. Let me stop this. Did I stop my screen share for you?
Yeah, I can see you.
Okay. Here we are. We're living in this society that really exhibits values that I disagree with. We inhabit this very materialistic culture that has grown out of what I think was a more community-oriented, spiritually grounded kind of community that we had, or the civilization that we had for most of the last 2,000 years. And of course, there was a lot of violence and oppression and all kinds of things. But what I see happening in our time is a movement away from a focus on collectivity and more toward just individual, not even fulfillment, but individual gratification, maybe. And what's always struck me about the conflict between art and capitalism is that they really exhibit two opposing value systems. That the only thing that sells in a capitalist world is either entertainment or decoration. And true art that is moving to a human being, that is transformative, is not ever going to be a big part of the market. And although there are some pretty notable exceptions to that, we see that over time, the great art tends to float to the top as it gets more and more circulation among fans and so forth. The system itself does not promote good art. And I realized that from the very first. And what I intended to do with my life was to work against that that uphill climb, to try to live out my values despite the values of the capitalist world. And when I was just in college and graduated from college, I was making small welded sculptures that I would sell for maybe 25 or 50 bucks. And a friend of mine came up to me one day and said, you know, do you want me to help you try to sell these things? And I said, sure, knock yourself out. And this guy became my manager for many, many years. And he was the reason why I was able to have such great success, because I refused to do sales. I refused to say to somebody, I'm glad that you like my art, but I want you to pay a certain amount for it. It's kind of like my father was a Methodist pastor. And in fact, my brother is the 6th Methodist pastor in our family, 6th generation. And I thought that selling art is kind of like my dad being approached by somebody to say, oh, could you please pray for my dead husband or something like that? And he would say to her, oh, sure, I'll do that if you give me $100. It's just such a violation of the spirit of the gift. And to me, art is the same way. If I make a piece of art, it's an act of love. And so to ask for money for it is really kind of a violation of the spirit of the thing. And what I was able to do by having a manager is he did all the dirty work, and I got to work on making the art. He would figure out how to sell it. And he did very, very well. And I was able to buy a house and a few buildings. I ended up buying 3 houses and a studio. And I'll share this screen again if I can figure it out. So I was able to produce quite a bit of kind of material success for me and my family. I put 4 people through college, you know, and after a couple of decades, I lost my manager, and I found another one with a great deal of difficulty. I found another person who could do that for me, and for another 5 years, I sold more work. But then what I realized was, you know, selling art is not what feeds my soul. What really feeds me is producing the work and being involved in the world and trying to make an impact in the places where I can. Part of my joy comes from being able to enter into a kind of relationship with the world that would allow me to live in this really conflicted relationship with capitalism. So in the late 80s, being so frustrated with that conflict, what I ended up doing was, along with my sister, I kind of invented my own religion and created a kind of monastic order that would allow me to continue doing this work in spite of the values of capitalism. So we together created something we call the Benedictine order, which is based on the same vows as the monastic vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience. And what that has to do with is my dedication to the creative muse that runs my life and inspires all of my art. And so part of that is poverty. Now, I was married at the time and I had 3 boys, and it was really hard for me to ask my family to live in poverty, but I was able to somehow make that work for myself. I tried to live in a really non-materialistic way as much as I could while still taking care of my family. And it's interesting to look back at my education, because after I graduated from college, I went to art school in London. And one of the things I really wanted to learn had to do with the lifestyle of the artist. It is, it's very apparent through history that artists have been, for the most part, not supported. I mean, it's kind of amazing to think that 100 years ago, there were 2 or 3 professional poets in the whole country of the US, 2 or 3 that were able to make their living at it. It's just astonishing to me. And now we look around us and we see there are actually thousands and thousands of artists who are able to make a living, and that's really great. But the conflict with that value system is still there. So what I wanted to do when I went to art school was learn how to live on next to nothing, because I knew if I could survive on very little, I would be able to be a person who is hard to kill by the capitalist world. So what I did in London was I lived in an abandoned house. I scrounged dumpsters for furniture. I rode my bicycle through a vegetable market at night after school, and sometimes I would see vegetables in the street and I'd pick them up and clean them off and eat what was good. So I really got a immersed sense of what it's like to live on nothing. And later in life, that lesson proved to be really valuable for me. So let me show you my studio here. This is a building that I bought in 1990 with the help of my manager. I got this building for $7,000. It's a 7,000 square foot building. I know, not 7,000, $16,000, 7,000 square feet. And it was just a wreck. You can see on the left here is what it looked like when I got it. It was a furniture warehouse. And I transformed it into a studio over the next few years. This is what it looks like now. This is the kind of the front room, the gallery. And there's a few videos online that offer a tour of the studio, which is a really amazing place. It was built in 1890 as a home for wayward women. And a lot of the original architecture and the wallpaper and woodwork is still there. It's really cool. But what I did here was I recycled an old building. And this is very much the kind of attitude I have to my whole life. A lot of the furniture in this building is just scrounged. I hardly buy anything new at all. I drive a car that's 30 years old that I gave to my first son, and he crashed it and gave it back. And I fixed it and gave it to my third son. He crashed it and gave it back, and I'm still driving it. So this is just a reflection of the fact that what is really important in my life is art and relationships and community. And all of those things are free. And of course, all of us have to make a living. We have to figure out how to survive in the world. But while I used to tell students, art students, that you can do what I did. You can work really hard and make some kind of a success if you're lucky. Nowadays, what I tell art students is be really careful to make a distinction between two things. One is making a living. So find a thing that can pay you money so you can survive and put a roof over your head. And the second thing is make a life. And that is devote yourself to something that really gives your life meaning. And over the last 15 years, what I have done is adopted a lifestyle that I call downwardly mobile. So I intentionally tried to make less and less money every year and to be happier. And I'm pleased to report that I've had a great deal of success. So about 5 years ago, I kind of hit the bottom when it comes to making money, because it turns out that there is a limit to the amount of money that I cannot make. I realized that I still have to sell art in a market that looks at free things as being worthless. If you think about it, if you win a cruise, most of us realize that what you've won is actually fairly worthless. I mean, yeah, you can go on a cruise, but you're going to end up paying a lot of things that you didn't realize up front. And so if I give art away, it has the danger of being seen as worthless. Nevertheless, I started a project a few years ago with a buddy of mine who is a brilliant speaker and was traveling all over the world speaking. He wasn't even 30 years old when I met with him one day, and he said, "Oh, I'm so tired of traveling." And I said, "How can you be tired of traveling? The world is full of wonder." And he said, "Oh, every airport and every hotel looks the same." And, I certainly understand what he was talking about. So I grabbed a handful of drawings. I said, next time you go on a trip, take these drawings, and your assignment is to pass them out to strangers. Don't ask for anything in return, and give me a report when you come back. So he came back from his trip and he said, "Wow, that absolutely transformed the way I travel." He said, "Before I was just barreling through the airport, trying to get to my gate, just trying to ignore people. And all of a sudden I'm looking around thinking, who can I give a drawing to?" So he had this wonderful experience. He started making speeches about it. Then he wrote a book called Random Gifts of Art. And I illustrated the book. And then that prompted one thing and another, and we ended up doing a TV show. We did a TED Talk. We did a live performance about reaching out to strangers. It was kind of a comedy show. And later on, we did a tour of Europe, a couple of tours of Europe with our comedy show. All the time giving away art and reaching out to people and being sort of a defiant defying the capitalist assumption that we all have to get paid for what we do. So I can give you links for all of these things so you can see what we're talking about here. But what I was able to do over the last few years is I pared down my life so that I live on fumes, basically. I spend very, very little money. Unfortunately, I don't have a mortgage anymore. My biggest expense is taxes and insurance on buildings. But people still come by and want to buy my art. And so I have to participate in the system. What I usually do is I'll give them some kind of a price, a price that seems like it is reasonable in the market. But then I'll usually say, well, I'll give you a discount because you live in Montana, or your name starts with H, or I like your color of your hair, or whatever. So there's kind of a minimum that I can, a minimum level that I can not make, as I said before. And it's way under the poverty line. So I haven't paid taxes in several years on my income. But at the same time, as I said before, I'm making less and less money, and I'm happier every year. And I think this is the kind of thing that most of us have the capacity to do. And of course, we have things like mortgages we have to pay, and car payments and that kind of thing. But I'm really trying to refine a life that is about community, about relationships, and about sharing beautiful things. And so for me, in my art has transformed from making objects into more of sharing community and opening up new ideas, like this Random Gifts of Art project. So I'll share this again. Here's a piece that I did during 2020, the COVID year, when all of us were isolated in our own apartments. I was in my studio, and I made this sculpture. It's about 4 feet high. It has 26 figures in it. This is called Awakened Human. And very, very few people have seen the actual work because it's very fragile. It's made out of mostly wood, plaster, and wax. And many of the projects I'm involved now are projects that have to do with opening up the society, bringing questions into the community. So for instance, I helped put together with a team of about 6 other people around the country, kind of a symposium this summer at my studio, where we invited people from all over the country and a couple of other countries to come to my studio to talk about what is it that needs to be awakened in your own life. And this is a lot of artists and psychologists and creative thinkers who came together to talk about how can we create a forward-looking, responsive culture that is not suicidal, that instead of just driving ourselves into the ground, which it feels like we're trying to do with our civilization, we can respond to the world and its problems and the people and what the people need and what we ourselves need to live a more healthy and vibrant life. Here's a couple of the paintings that I do. I wanted to show you this one. This was created for this symposium called Confluence 22. The sculpture is entitled The Water Bearer, and it's about the coming of the Aquarian age. And this is an image of an older woman with a jar of water on her shoulder, pouring the water into the bowl held by this figure on the left, who's a young man on his knees. And this is the rising of the feminine qualities of relationship and nurture. This was the theme of our confluence this summer, and we're going to do another one next fall in California, the Confluence 23, and that one will be on the theme of the rising feminine. So I've gone over my time, but let me just say I really appreciate your listening to my stammering about trying to figure out how to talk about the weird life that I live. But I wonder if anybody has questions.
Thank you, Tim, so much. That was just amazing and fascinating. So we are going to open it up for questions in a minute. But I just wanted to go over a couple rules because I know there's some new people here. Again, everyone, welcome to 52 Ideas. We have 4 rules that we have when you want to share. Number 1, you can type exclamation point in the chat to speak. Number 2 is to keep on topic. Number 3 is to be concise. And number 4 is to be brief. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to type exclamation point in chat, or you can raise your hand as Zoom's. Jordan, I saw you first. So I'm going to unmute everybody. That way you can unmute yourselves. So give me 1 second. Okay, so I actually had Jordan, Jing, Michael, and Laura.
All right, fire away, Jordan.
Tim, I just want to say how much I appreciate your currency of value with community relationships, sharing beautiful things. To me, the currency of value is where the heart of the matter is, especially the water bearer there, the creative drive pouring out, bringing literally the magic of pulling water from thin air. So I really don't have a question. I just want to say how much I appreciate that you're living a currency of value. And I think from that, then how, the limit to how much you can't make is not subsistence. And it's clearly shows you're experiencing, in a sense, thrival by living your life your way, your life your way. And I think that currency of value is 1, heartfelt, but 2, it keeps the heart of the matter in, instead of pounding out the heart with too much logic, as it were, or too much performance or stats. And so I just want to say thank you for especially going through the bullet points and going through your pieces of how you are living a currency of value.
Well, thanks, Jordan. I appreciate that. And it reminds me that one of the things I feel like I can do is, here I live way under the poverty line, but I live like a king. And I think it's just even amazing to me that I can do anything I want. For instance, we did our random gifts of art tour of Europe 2 years in a row. And it was expensive, like a 6-week vacation would be. And I sent both of us on the road for 6 weeks on my own dime. I mean, that's the kind of thing that I can do because I live such a meager life day to day that I'm able to save up enough to do projects like this when it comes up. And I have the freedom to be able to move around without having to clock in every day and that kind of thing. So I appreciate what you say.
Yeah,
Jane, I think you were
put the money where your heart is instead of money where your mouth is. I mean, it
Yeah.
flips the perspective.
Yeah.
Thank you. Up next, I have Jing, followed by Michael, Laura, and Joe.
Yeah, Tim, thank you so much for sharing your story. So it's first time I learned more about your personal experience. It's very inspiring. Actually, I personally experienced a similar conflict in my own life because I have a two group of friends. You know, my client, a lot of people, the IT people, Chinese people, very driven. They're very material success. 6-7 million mansion. I visited my friend with big boats, and I really like those. But at the same time, I have other group of friends who are designers. They build this beautiful house. They craft, they made all these beams, steel beams, and they hardly have any money. Just like I just saw this, but they're happy. So I just saw this conflict. And I actually trying to teach my kids not to be too materialized. I said, because you don't want to be slave. Because if you rely too much on the things, then you have to make money. Then you have to do things you may not like. So I just wonder, it's my kids, like the younger generation, they all don't care about money as much. And I see that as a hope to change, to make the society change. I just wonder, it seems a lot of people don't like the capitalism society, but we are stuck in there. And how we can collectively make some change. I think that's what I found is like there are a lot of needs, just like product. You have to throw away or you don't know where to give. So it seems there's a disconnection between the needs and the thing, and there's so much waste. And if there's a way we can all be connected, and then we can make substantial change to the system we don't like. Instead of we are kind of like be a slave. You either have material and happy, or you don't have it. You suffer either way in certain way. So I just wonder, do you see like how we can collectively make some change?
Well, it seems to me that it's very much true that the best things in life are free. And it's interesting to me that it's so hard for us to believe that that's true. And part of the reason is this kind of keeping up with the Joneses tradition of American society, where we feel like we're not good enough unless we appear to be as successful as the next guy. And one of the things that really bugs me about the capitalist culture is our education system, which I'm not talking about the schools, I'm talking about advertising. Advertising is with us all the time, every day, every minute of the day, all our lives long. And the worst person for an advertiser is a happy person. If you're happy, they can't talk you into buying anything. And so one of the things that I've been able to do is be so enamored of my own position that I don't care what other people say about my old clothes or my cheesy car or any of the hooks that the advertisers use to try to get people to keep moving product. To me, it's important that we have connections with each other. Like you're saying, the most important things in life are our relationships. And if we can spend our time on our relationships rather than on pursuing material things or entertainment, then we're always going to be in a richer place. And of course, then we can support each other. We can give each other the kind of feedback that this kind of forum provides and so forth.
Thank you, Tim. Up next, I have Michael, Laura, Joe, and Siona. Michael, you're next.
Thank you very much. First of all, thank you very much. I believe your art is timeless, Mr. Holmes. And so in that spirit, I'm asking, what is one thing you would like future art history classes to cover when presenting your work? And which pieces of art would you like them to cover in that class?
Oh, what a question. Yeah, it's interesting. I think about these things all the time because, for instance, in making bronze, bronze is the most resilient material that human beings have made. And so the bronzes that I make are going to be around 5,000 years from now. And I've got to take that very seriously. I don't want to make a stupid mistake and have it be around for 5,000 years. So I really think that in 200 or 300 years, if people are looking back at my work, I hope what they are able to do is focus on the story. It's not the object itself. You know, my dog knows what an object of a bronze is. My dog is not interested in the bronze, right? It doesn't taste good. You can't do anything with it. But a human being can look at the bronze and project their own soul into it. And all of a sudden it comes alive like another person. And in 5,000 years, a person who projects into that bronze will have it come alive. And it's not because of me, it's because of their own soul. And that's part of the story of what the art is about. And so in the future, I hope that there's more of an awareness of how the artwork, and this applies to any art throughout history, it has its own character, it has its own soul, and that soul is going to stay alive as long as the artwork is in existence. Thanks, Michael.
Thank you, Michael. Up next, I have Laura, Joe, and Siona.
Okay, I really appreciate everything you said. I really enjoyed looking at your work. Couple things I'll say up front. I have chosen to be an abstract expressionist painter, basically because I feel that because it's open to the individual's interpretation, that it's one way that they can become involved with the artwork. And I step aside as they begin to look and begin to see certain imagery. I paint with no intentionality so that it's wide open for anyone's interpretation. And I feel that I see a lot of people in my world because I paint in my bedroom, you know, people coming out of my house who have no idea about art. That's their first comment. And I say, well, look at it. Do you like the colors? What, you know, and it opens up a door to them where they begin to start to see things. And it's a really interesting process to watch them engage and evolve, you know, in my artwork, to the point where they'll say, well, why don't you put a little blue over there, you know, or do they start to tell me what colors to put somewhere. But anyway, so that's one point, and I sort of agree with you a lot about, I don't like having to sell my work per se. I used to give all my artwork away when I first started painting again. I sort of was on a 45-year hiatus, so I was so excited to paint, and people would come to my house and they'd like a painting and they'd leave with it. And my daughter thought that was great. I thought it was great. And then I suddenly felt this need to maybe show my work because I wanted to support myself. I mean, it's expensive. It's not a cheap hobby, let's put it that way. And so I felt this need, and it's very difficult. The world of showing work in galleries, it's really rather, I can't stand it. I mean, it sickens me. You know, they want thousands of dollars just to come in the door, and then they want 60% of that. And it's just, you know, it's awful in my opinion. And so I was lucky enough when I was living in Rome to have my dog helped me out to get a solo show in a very beautiful little spot near my home. It was an architect studio, but it had been a gallery, and he wanted to have art and architecture. And, you know, my dog stuck her nose through some bushes at a cafe, and it was all history then. And so I had some show, and I had a show at the US Embassy at the same, for a month. So those are my first experiences. And I sold more paintings at the US Embassy than anyone had ever sold. And that was a total of 4. So you can imagine how difficult it is to sell. And I'm very, I price to sell. I'm not interested in putting a huge price tag so that it sits there and I have to bring it home all the time. And I'm very happy to negotiate prices. I can't do this to make a living for my life, you know. And I must say, I pretty much live a pauper's life because I live in New York, and you know what, poverty line in New York as compared to the rest of the world. So, it's still, it would be a very good lifestyle in Mississippi possibly, but in New York City, it's not so. So I do have to sell work in a certain sense just to support buying supplies and so forth. And it's hard though. I have to price my own work and I'm just like, I don't care about how much paint. I don't measure the dollars of paint that I put on a canvas. I would go broke in a minute if I did that because I use tons of paint. I paint and paint and paint over and paint over and paint under. I don't care, and the size of the canvas and how much time I spent. I don't want to sit there and calculate all these things. I'd be doing that instead of painting. And I refuse. And so I kind of set prices. And my daughter says to me, you charge too little. And I say, no, I charge what I think is right. And even my homemade said, you really should charge more. Your work is really good. You make prices too low. I said, no, I don't, and so I wound up selling 3 paintings in 2 shows, which was probably better than most did because I keep my prices at a point where somebody, if they really love my painting, they'll come to me, and if they don't feel they can afford it, we'll negotiate till they can afford to buy it. And then it goes to their home and they enjoy it. I want my work to go to a place where people really love it and want to look at it, but that's a hard thing to do. And the other hard thing to do is not to be a capitalist in it, not to want to have to, generate money from these to survive kind of thing. When I went to art school back in the mid 70s, I should say, maybe, yeah, I had to leave because I couldn't live hand to mouth. I just wasn't brought up with that gene in me. My mother used to put little brown envelopes and divvy up all the money that had to be spent so that, there was certain to be. And so I had that in me, and I couldn't live like a job here, a job there. And I needed to know that I had money. So I went to work, and that took me off into a completely different tangent in life. And I didn't get back to painting, for 45 years. And it was only by a coincidence in my health that struck me down that when I came back into the world, the only thing I knew I could possibly do would
Laura,
be to paint. So yeah, I'm done.
thank you.
So thanks. It's just too much. I resonate so strongly with everything he said. And he's
I
the first
understand, but
person
we have
who's
other
done
people that
I
need
know,
to
I'm sorry.
speak.
But I haven't been around.
Yeah,
for
there's
so
other people waiting to speak,
I
but
know.
thank
I
you.
haven't been around for months.
I know we
Well,
missed you,
thank you.
Laura.
I lost my 2-minute ability. I'll have to go back home and work on it. We're only
Oh, no
supposed to take
worries.
2 minutes to say things.
Thank you, Laura.
Thanks, Ebony. I'm sorry.
No
Look,
worries.
I'll
No
put this up.
worries.
I'll put this around my mouth. I won't be able to speak again. How's that?
Thank you, Laura. We appreciate everything you said. Up next, I have Joe, Siona, and Michael.
Well, Tim, and thank you for the presentation again. One of the things I was wondering is about how do you decide on what type of project you're going to, accept? I imagine you have a lot of different opportunities, like in a lot of different, how do you decide? What is the process by which you decide to pursue? What is it about a project that really inspires you to take it on? You mentioned that since you're, somewhat free of these these external pressures that would be on to most artists, that you're really allowed to choose and select whatever you want. So what is it that, what's the process like, and then what is it that really allows you to take on a project?
Well, I mentioned this kind of religious order that I came up with. Essentially, what it is a devotion to my muse. And my muse is the creative source that gives me the idea. And it could be said that it's just another name for God, or it's just another name for my own unconscious. But what this devotion does is it gives all my serious attention to the voice of that unheard spirit that motivates my world. And so I have to absolutely devote myself to that voice. So when I get up in the morning and the voice says, guess what? Today we're going to do an installation, or we're going to do a performance, a street performance. And I say, what the hell? I'm a sculptor. Don't give me that. And if the muse says, go out and do it, that's exactly what I do. And that's how I make that decision. And so that practice for me is really my spiritual practice. It's the way that I direct myself, and it's also the thing that gives me meaning in my life. So thank you for that great question.
Thank you.
Thank you. Up next, I have Siona, followed by Michael and Tom.
Tim, first of all, thank you so much. There was something so very sane making about your entire talk. I'm another like intentional aesthetic or monastic in some way, and I don't really have an ideology behind it. It just feels correct, but it sometimes feels like living in this crazy world, and it's so beautiful to hear articulated that, you know, there's others out there. And now this is a little funny. You just answered my question. My question was going to be, my heart just sparked at listening to what you said before about your monastic order or your religion. And I was going to ask more about that, but you just went ahead and answered that preemptively anyway. If there's more you'd like to share on that, where that came from, what it looks like, I'd love to hear more. Like, that was going to be my question.
I love these questions. This is great, Siona. I am very much a mystic. I feel like, coming from this long line of Methodist ministers on both branches of my family, I have that character deeply in my spirit. And if I had a better public speaking capability, I may have turned out to be a preacher or something. But if someone asks what my religion is, it's kind of a combination of United Methodism, Native American spirituality, Taoism, and 2 or 3 other things. But my day-to-day practice is my devotion to the muse. And so all of that mixes together for me, meaning that as far as I'm concerned, the spiritual life is what gives my day a purpose. And that's been my whole life, and I hope it continues to be my life, that connecting with my deepest unconscious, connecting with the Spirit of God, with the Great Spirit, is what gives meaning and purpose to my life. And so art making is a form of prayer for me. And there's all kinds of ways that unfolds, but I don't think we have time to go into all that. But anyway, thank you, and good luck to you. I'm glad to hear that there's other people that are on this road.
Thank you.
Thank you, Siona. Up next, I have Michael, Tom, Penny, Joe, and myself. So, Michael, you're up next.
First of all, I'd just like to thank Mr. Holmes for that wonderful answer to my question. I appreciate that. And I'm going to ask kind of a very controversial question to me. Say I'm in a future art history class, and they're covering your works, Mr. Holmes, and the instructor characterizes your artwork as anti-capitalist. How would you respond to that?
I would try to couch it in positive language. Yeah, it's anti-capitalist, but what it is pro-humanity. The things that are important about being alive in the world are not material things. They're about creativity. They're about relationship. They're about taking care of the community around you, including all of the plants and animals. We have this incredibly godlike capacity to be creative, unlike the rest of the natural world. We have these amazing minds that allow us to create just like God created the universe. And I feel a similar thing about religion, that a vital authentic religion cannot be addressed in negative terms. It can only be addressed in positive terms. A religion can't be about I'm anti this and anti that and anti this. It's got to be I'm pro love, I'm pro respect, et cetera, et cetera. So that'd be my response. Thanks for giving me a 300-year question.
Thank you. Up next, I have Tom, Penny, Joe, myself, and Rose. So Tom, you're up next.
Thanks, and thank you, Ebony, for putting on this symposium. And Tim,
I have to say, Tom is
disclosure.
one of my old friends. We played music together in the 70s. So I'm glad to see you, my friend.
Same here, bud. It reminds me that we've known each other for 50 years, and I knew you early in your art career, and I used to see your sculptures in the garage, and I'd see you, working on them, and wow, that's really cool. Little spoons and fork guys that were humanized, and I just want to say, Tim is really modest. He hasn't talked about his musical talents, which are, they're just, but that's another whole subject for another day. I just want to say, Tim, I'm proud to know you, and I'm proud of all your accomplishments all these years. And we spent a long time not being in communication, but we've recently been back in communication. And I'm just struck by the way you're just true to yourself. You've always been the same guy, and I love you for that. I'll try to make it brief, but I remember there's a book I read in art school. I became an artist too, and stayed a musician, artist pretty much my whole life. But I've made big sales and I've made no sales, so I know what you're talking about. But a book that came to me in art school, which was Robert Henry's The Art Spirit.
Oh yeah.
And everything you said today reminds me of that book, because he talks about living a life, a purposeful life in an artful way. Everything you do, you don't have to be a visual artist or a musical artist. We all do things every day, but there's a right way to do things. And he also said art is the result of right feeling. So in other words, if you're feeling good and you're just doing anything like tying your shoes, there might be you might figure out some special artful way to do that, and on throughout your day, everything you do, and how you relate to people and things like that. But thank you for doing this tonight, and I've really enjoyed it, and it's good to see you, and nice to meet some new faces.
Well, thanks, Tom. This reminds me that one of the things that has been characteristic about my work is that I just cannot concentrate on one medium. And so shortly after I was working with Tom, when I was in college, I got into a group of 4 guys that formed a political satire group, and we performed together for 38 years. It's called the Montana Logging and Ballet Company, and I'll stick it in the chat here. But that again is doing the same thing with music. It's trying to be positive, trying to ask questions, ask difficult questions, and try to engage people on a place where they live, and not on some level of, I don't know, entertainment or I don't know what the alternatives are, but trying to speak to the place where people live. So thanks,
Right.
Tom.
Oh, you bet. And just one more thing. I know from experience that trying to be a success monetarily as any kind of artist is brutal. It's just brutal. And Laura made a point about that. And so it's not about money the thing that drives you is that thing inside, that muse that you're talking about, Tim. And so I agree totally.
Amen.
Thank you, Tom. Up next,
you.
oh, you're welcome. Up next, I have Penny, Joe, myself, and Roots.
So actually, it's Brian answering a question. I was struck by the sculpture that you picked for Confluence 2023. I think you'd used it once before. You related
Water
it, I
bearer?
think, yeah, at the age of Aquarius, the old woman pouring, I think, inspiration into the cup for the kneeling young man. How did you hit on that image?
Well, it comes out of the idea of the Aquarian age, which is, as I understand it, Jordan can correct me, he knows more about this than I do, but every age is about 2100 years, and we're just coming to the end of the age of Pisces and into the age of Aquarius. And what that means to me is we as human beings have to evolve to a new level. And all of these crises that we're facing, particularly the climate change crisis, but also the pandemic and the demise of democracy and the political bifurcation that we see, not only in the US, but all over the world, all of these things are a call to responsibility. And this sculpture, Awaken Human, with all the figures in it, is about that, is about, can we evolve fast enough to be able to solve these problems and save our species from extinction? Or are we just going to relax and say, well, you know, it's been a good ride, you know, we'll see you on the bottom of the waterfall? To me, the Aquarian age has to do with feminine wisdom coming into the empty bowl of the masculine patriarchal spirit that has driven our age for the last 50,000 years, I think, or at least the last 3,000 or 4,000, when the human species started to look at nature as some kind of an enemy that we had to overcome. Now we're at the point where, man, if we don't have a reciprocal relationship with nature, it is going to win and we're going to lose. So that's what
I think
about.
my wife also has a question.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, well, actually, it was kind of related to the same sculpture and what you had said, because we have been doing a few meetups on the divine feminine, and have read several books about that, and I was really quite awestruck, kind of learning that history, and realizing as a woman, you knew you were kind of a secondary citizen, but not knowing the whole history of it. And then starting to realize the huge impact that's had on humanity, that basically half of the people, nobody's listened to them. Nobody's let them express what they feel should be done. And I was kind of curious how you came to that, and chose it for these two projects.
Well, partly that's with the help of the other 6 people that have been working with me on this Confluence idea. Partly because, to me, I did a TED talk about this that maybe I can stick in here. About 4 or 5 years ago, I did this TED talk called The Erotic Crisis. And what it's about is that human progress is kind of it's become an addiction, that we are so used to the idea of progress being a positive thing that every time a new Wait a minute here. I've got to.
Are you looking for it, Tim, or?
I'm trying to get rid of that thing. I don't know where that's coming from.
There's nothing on our end.
Sorry.
No worries.
Sorry, let me. I don't know where this is.
What is it?
Jim, are you hearing any kind of music or something? Tim? What's the problem? Tim, you're on mute.
I'm trying to get rid of that.
Get rid of music or something?
Yeah.
Okay, I had the same issue. I don't know what's going on. Please open your browser. There must be something in the browser that is playing a music. I don't know how, but that's what happened with me.
All my browsers are closed.
You might, yeah, minimize your browser so maybe there's some little window right in the middle of the screen that's playing some.
I'm quitting. I've quit everything.
It's interesting. I had the same issue. I was trying to figure it out. It turned out that one of my browser windows was playing music for some reason.
Let me exit. Let me exit and I'll come back.
Sounds good.
I wonder, is that a hacker?
No, I don't think so.
They're usually more bold. I didn't hear anything though. I mean, I didn't hear anything.
They're usually more annoying than just
I did.
music.
Yeah.
It's like-
Yeah, usually hackers are just like bold and try to take over everything. Harry. Who's Leo?
Yeah, I know. But yeah, I know Shirkan was asking about the music and I didn't hear anything. Now Tim got it. So that's why I wonder if there's
I heard
something.
it as well.
You
I
did?
didn't hear it.
Yeah.
Oh my God. It must
That's
be
weird.
something.
Does
Oh my
anybody
God.
know who Leo is while we're
Leo. No.
Leo is the hacker.
I think the hacker is already in. Hacker is already inside.
right, Tom?
Oh my God.
Okay, what we
Yeah,
could
that's,
do is actually we could
we can go to the breakout room.
yeah, for about
Yeah, then Tim can join either of the rooms.
Okay.
Yeah, let's do that.
All right. So little shift. So we're going to do the breakout rooms, and in the breakout rooms, we have the question, what are your takeaways from what Tim presented tonight? And you
then
know,
hopefully we'll be able to come back and be able to ask a couple more questions or
yeah.
share a couple takeaways.
Yeah, we do have a couple people lined up. Just for sake of time, if you don't mind, Joe, I'm going to let Rose go first since she did not get a chance to ask a question of Tim.
But maybe we should wait till Tim come back to ask the question, right?
Oh yeah, here he is.
Here's Tim's. Here's Tim. Yeah.
So we don't have to do that.
Oh, I'm so sorry, you guys. I had to restart my computer to get that thing to shut off.
No worries. We all need a restart sometimes. Sometimes every 5 minutes for me. So you're all good. Okay, so you were answering the question of Penny. I didn't know if you got a chance to finish.
Can you remind me?
Oh, now you're getting the echo.
I was just asking about how you had come to select this issue of the divine feminine for the projects you were working on. And I think you had said you had a team that was working on it. And then you had gone on to talk a little bit about the TED Talk.
Yeah.
About progress, constant progress.
Yeah, that to me is sort of the masculine spirit, is what we think of as progress is really this kind of battle against nature. And, you know, for the last 50,000 years, every time we kind of subdue a piece of nature, what we derive from that is progress. And now we're at the point where it seems to me that the more progress we accomplish, the worse off we are. So it's like we've come to the top of the trajectory, and now we're going down with new progress. So when we are faced with some new technology or new product, the first thing we ought to do is to say, what is this going to cost me? So if you can, you know, here we've got instant communication around the world, and it's a great thing to be able to have meetings like this where we can all be in the same room, even though we're spread across the country. But what is the cost of depending on having instant communication? And part of the cost for me is that we lose the quality of the interaction we have with other people. So we lose that sense of being engaged with the other person's face, or being able to touch the other person and feel communication that way. So the feminine spirit to me is one that prioritizes relational interaction and reciprocation instead of transactional relationships and that kind of thing.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Penny, and thank you, Tim. Up next, I have Joe, myself, and Rose.
Yeah, so one of the themes here we have is this is about designing your life, and you know, you've been able to, shall we say, pursue your artistic desires or dreams, while a lot of other people give up. And I was just wondering, what is it that allowed you to pursue your that enabled you to pursue your desires, where a lot of other people maybe sometimes don't? And I know we've talked about a lot of the systemic issues that incentivize people to maybe quit, but has to be something underneath that allowed you to say that this is what I want to do and I'm going to do it.
Well, it seems to me that the commercial or the context of the pressure that we get from civilization is really a heavy influence on all of us, that we just assume naturally that we need certain things to stay alive. And the fact is, what we need to stay alive is really very, very minimal. So one of the projects I'm working on right now with my partner is trying to come up with a way to do a tiny house village in our town. We live in Helena, Montana. It's the capital. It's about a town of maybe 35,000 people. We have a big homeless problem, as everybody does around the country. And we're trying to figure out a way that we can allow homeless people with mental illness and addiction to be able to come together and start building these little houses that they can then own and live in, and it helped lift them out of poverty. And in going through this process, I keep thinking about, why in the world do I need all this that I'm surrounded with? What do I really need to be happy? And it's a very, very powerful question, and it's really hard to answer because we are so used to our things. We are so used to the stuff that we have built around us that we think we have to have that to survive. But you look at a situation like somebody who's been wiped out by a flood, or the war in Ukraine, or any number of, the refugees coming over the border. These are people who have nothing and are able to survive. And many of them are really quite happy with not with their situation, but with their lives and with themselves. And that's what I think if we look at our lives at that level, we can start to see, oh, I see, I don't need all this crap. I can thrive and maybe improve with a lot less.
Thank you, Tim. Up next, I have, me and Rose and then Jing. So my question was, it's really just a request. You were talking about your art and spirituality being related and as one. And I know you were talking briefly about that. I was wondering if you could just speak a little more on that.
Well, for an artist, as Lorna, as a lot of you are artists, and as you understand, the market is really an incredible pressure. If people love something you do, there's a great deal of pressure to continue it. And I think one of the worst things that can happen to an artist is to achieve success, because the pressure is so great that what you are tempted to do is to repeat that hit over and over and over and over again. And we see this happen all over the art world, that somebody gets something that's really popular and they just keep trying to reproduce it in a new way. And so their creativity gets killed. And for me, the reason I give so much devotion to my muse is that she does not traffic in any kind of success. It's very much like prayer. It's very much like listening to the very faint stirrings of the deepest part of our soul. And sometimes I'm tempted to do something that I know is going to sell well, or that I know some group is really going to like. And I have to consult with my muse and I have to say, is this really what you want me to do? And if she says, nope, we're doing paper mache today or something like that, I say, yes, ma'am, and away we go.
Thank you so much. That was just amazing. And I'm gonna have to go back and think about that. So up next, I have Rose, followed by Jing.
Hi, Tim. I'm so appreciative of you living your values, not just professing them. So that's really beautiful to see that. I have two questions for you. So my first question is, what advice would you give a starving artist who hasn't had the type of success you had and ends up doing something else to make a living? And then my second question is, why did you decide to make less money rather than invest the money you earn into communities that need them?
Boy, those are really good questions. Let me take the second one first. It feels to me like making money and investing it is a little bit on the side of it's too complex. It's more like making a certain process 2 steps instead of 1 step. If the point is to invest in the community, then invest in the community. Don't make money and invest in the community. Do you see what I'm saying? So it's really important to me to maintain good relationships and to be really plugged in to the community. So there's a lot of things that I'm doing in my little town, a lot of them having to do with clean energy and with sustainable living. And all I need to do that is to enter a phone call or go and visit somebody or, write a letter. And so getting a job to make a bunch of money in order to do that is just a really clunky approach. So that's the answer to the second one. The first one about advice is I try to advise people who are interested in art to make it their hobby or their second life instead of their primary life, because it is so hard to make a living. It is so hard to be pure. If you love painting or dancing or something, if you go into that for a career, you're going to face all of these incredible pressures that are very, very hard to deny. And so if you love dancing, figure out how to stay alive and then figure out how to spend your life dancing.
Thank you, Tim. Up next, I have Jean. And then after Jean, we will go into the breakout rooms.
Yes, I really like Tim's answer for the second question, because I have the similar question to my kids. My kids, he's very good at drawing. He wanted to study computer science. And it's funny, like I asked him, he very care about the homeless community. And I said, then why don't you make money and be successful in helping them? And then he told me, if he has to make money, he has to exploit other people. So it's kind of interesting. It seems what you do is like, instead of participate in the system you're against, to make money, then you reward, invest in the community. You're just trying to against the system itself. So it's just like what my son was saying. So I think this is really, really from the root to see the problem. So my question is, our whole meeting, the idea is design your life to live a balanced life, mind-body spirit. And I can see, a lot of problem we have is like our societies, when you focus too much on material side of the world, because we are lost in the spiritual part, then all our focus is on the material part. And the problem is like, when you have too much material, you spend your energy to making them, maintain them, investing. So I have this theory, when we go to work to make money, then after work, we have to manage our money, because the money we make doesn't sustain the value. It's like, do we have time to have a break from the money? It's kind of ironic, the life we're living. So I think how we balance the material world, have more spiritual. I don't see everybody will live like you because we don't have the courage or the muse. But I see you show us the example how important the spiritual part of our life is, because I see a lot of my friends who has a lot of money, but they're not happy. Actually, they think, oh, how can you do things you like? I'm architect. Actually, the reason I choose architecture, because I love drawing. And I said, the technology and the drawing, so I can do something fun, but I can serve other people. That's why I can make money, because if I just do something I enjoy, people will not pay me for that. So I see, the point is like, make a career you enjoy, and also you can provide value to other people. Then they will pay for your service. So that's why I try to teach my kids to, design their life around their strengths and what they can offer to the society. So, how to balance, I think that's the key, how to find the balance, design your life, find the balance. And I see you as example show the opposite to what the society is showing us, the only way. And I see most people will find the middle way.
Yeah, there's a sense in which, like a fish in water, we become blind to the medium that we live in. And I learned a really important lesson from this guy named Charles Eisenstein about economics. And I don't know much about economics, but he made me understand something about debt. So debt is a part of the capitalist system that we just all participate in, and we think of it as, oh yeah, I'm going to take out a loan and I pay it back and everything is done. Well, what actually happens is somebody charges you interest, so you have to produce more than you were given. And so you pay that. If you incur debt and you have somebody else do something for you to repay that debt, then they've incurred a debt. And the debt keeps getting bigger and bigger. And now the world debt is about 6 times the value of everything on the earth. So it's like a gigantic Ponzi scheme. And I don't think it's the world is suddenly going to explode. But what it made me realize is that just by participating in that ongoing capitalist system, we're contributing to the demise of the world. And this is far beyond what I can explain, but it helps me to think about how is it that you can change the world? You know, I want to change the world, pick me. The way to do that is one decision at a time. So I'm going to decide what I'm going to have for dinner. That's a decision that I want to make responsibly, that I want to participate wholly in. And then the next decision, I want to make that responsibly and participate wholly in it. And as soon as I get to a point where, oh, I've got to take advantage of this person, or I'm going to charge them more than they can afford, or whatever. At that point, I realize, okay, I'm making the world a worse place. So it comes down to those moment-to-moment decisions.
Thank you, Tim. Up next, I have Mona, followed by Jane T. Mona, you're up.
Thank you. I apologize. I don't have a camera on this computer. Tim, I wanted to say hello. You wouldn't remember me, I imagine, but back in about 2000, I did life drawing in your studio with a bunch of Helena artists.
Oh, great.
Louis Archambault, particularly.
Yeah.
And it made a huge impression upon me. I became very humble.
Thank you.
At the time, I was living over by the train around, what do they call that? The depot over there.
Uh-huh.
Kind of in a crisis in my life, making fish prints on the floor. But I just wanted to say that I always appreciated your two-dimensional art. I loved your map series. And every now and then I check back just to see what you're doing. And it's always just amazing. So I'm sure you've touched many, many people in your life like me. And I just think of you often.
Oh, well, thank you.
And that's really about all I have to say. I think my philosophy is somewhat different from yours, but you're not too much interested in that. I think the new feminists are trying to become a lot more like men. I don't think that's a good thing when people aren't taking care of their own children and things like that.
Right. Yeah. Let me just share a little bit of the maps that she's talking about. Let me find one here. These are metaphysical maps, maps of internal journeys that that describe something about the internal life, but that have no easy way to describe, kind of like the early explorers tried to make maps of the world that they were encountering. And if you look at the early maps, they are just so bizarre. They're full of monsters and misspellings and all kinds of things. And shoot, I'm having a hard time finding an image, but go ahead and get to the next question and I'll get it up on the screen here.
Okay, just give me 1 second. Up next, I have Jane, followed by Michael.
Hi, Tim. Hi. Thanks for inviting me to this. This is great. My question is, so you talked about your devotion to the muse, and it sounds like kind of this absolute devotion to your muse, and that being like your spiritual practice. So what was that, and is that always easy? You know, I guess that's really it. I mean, it sounds like, and I think about that being your spiritual practice and being a spiritual practice, and I get that, and that's really like being alive and living. And but was that always easy for you?
Oh man. Easy is not the right word. It was always compelling. Let me share this map while I'm talking about this.
Oh, yeah.
Finding that true self is always hard. It's like finding the voice of God. It's like finding the deepest place in meditation. It's always a struggle to turn off the outside world, to turn off the chatter in your head, and to make yourself available to that still, quiet voice. It's become easier as I get older, just because I've had a lot of practice, and every day I reject the outside world in a way. I wake up in the morning and I say, well, I'm not going to try to be a more successful artist. I'm not going to try to get my name in the paper. I'm going to spend my time trying to unfold this mystery that is inside of me. I hope that's a sufficient answer. This map is a good example of that. This is about touching. It's called the veiled realm of sex. And it's about how do we encounter that part of ourselves that so deeply intertwines with another person? And what does that mean for us? And so this is just an exploration, an internal exploration, asking questions. What is it about? How can we more intimately be in touch with each other? So thanks for those questions, you guys. Oh, and incidentally, Jane is another old friend of mine. I've known her for what, 25 years?
Probably, maybe more. Yeah.
Yeah, we met on a plane one time.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you for being here, Jane. Up next, I have Michael.
Oh, thank you. I would like to ask Mr. Holmes, a more personal question, okay? And, my parents talked about Dr. Spock. I remember that when I was a kid, okay? And, if you had any recollections of, Dr. Spock, and, if he influenced you in any particular way that you would care to mention.
Well, what Michael's referring to is I did an award for the Physicians for Social Responsibility back in the 80s, and they gave this every year as a kind of a peace prize to the foremost peacemaker of the time. And one year it was Dr. Spock, the baby doctor, that got that award. And I didn't get to go to that presentation, so I didn't get to meet him. It's one of the few awardees that I didn't get to meet. So I have to plead ignorance. I don't know very much about his work, and I didn't get to meet him, so sorry.
Thank you, Michael. Does anyone else have any questions or comments? If you do, you can type exclamation point in the chat. Otherwise, we can go to takeaways.
All right, Lisa, you're very welcome.
So we don't do the breakout room?
Well, it's 10. Well, we only have 15 minutes left in the meetup. Do you still want to do that?
What do you think, Tim?
Sure. Oh,
Yeah, let's do a little breakout and I'll just come visit each room.
Looks like everybody's back. So now what we're going to do is we're going to do some takeaways, like what did you guys get from this evening? You know, if you have any final thoughts, please share them now. You can type exclamation point in the chat. So whenever you're ready. So up next we have Joe.
yeah, I just want to thank Tim for being here this evening. You know, the reason why we have this meetup is about designing your life. And Tim has done that, where he's living what he believes and in accordance with his values. And we've had a lot of meetups here at 52 Living Ideas that talk about living your values. One of them, I can even think of one of them is outwitting the devil by not drifting, by living, you know, just finding out what you want to do and following your purpose. We can even talk about some of the other meetups that we still have going on, where it talks about we have one ongoing with Ray Dalio's Principles book, where he talks about setting goals and having, you know, living according to the, you know, or having values and setting goals and then making sure you're successful in those goals. And Tim has been wildly successful. And you know, it's a pleasure to have somebody here that can serve as an example as what it means to live your values and to design your life. And you know, to have an artist is very fortunate as well. I think I could think of no better example. So thank you, Tim, for being here. That's my takeaway. It's an inspiration, and hopefully you'll be able to join us again.
Thank you. It's been great.
Thank you, Joe. Up next, I have Jordan.
And I second that. Thank you. Thank you, Tim. I mean, I really appreciate this. So many, I think, Siona, like my heart sparked kind of thing. That's there. I mean, I've got lots of notes, but to dial down to what's my overarching piece instead of, you know, playing this and going through a bunch of things, I wrote down from inspired by what you said that, I mean, it's sent off of my currency of value versus currency of money, and that money was important as a utility as a subset of the currency of value. I wrote down disposable things, disposable people, disposable societies are not relational, and not living the relational and not living the relational causes societies to die from having no heart. And I think that's what I got. I think in the overarching piece, among the, I don't know, don't know if I've been in an hour and a half or so thing and written like 3 pages of notes where thank you very much. Cause usually I'm kind of, thank you so much. Cause this was really robust and I got so many beautiful pieces. But I think that disposable things, disposable people, disposable societies are not relational, and that if you're living the relational, excellent, and if you're not living the relational, your society will die, just in a sense because of you. I mean, you're one of the pieces of dead skin, of just, I guess, be fluid but don't go with the flow. But only dead fish go with the flow, kind of thing.
Yes.
So that's I'll stop there.
That's great.
Thank you, Jordan. Up next, I have Jing, followed by Sherry Kant.
Yeah, Tim, thank you so much to be our first guest speaker, and you set a very high standard for our future speaker. Yeah, and I hope you will come back too. I think we learned the design way before, and they're talking about as a designer, the most important thing is be the design yourself. And I think you show as artists, the artwork is just reflect part of you, and you shows how to live authentic life as artist and try to be true to yourself. I think that's very critical to anybody as designer or artist. Yourself is the artwork, your life is the artwork, every single action. So that's make huge impact, bigger impact than just the artwork itself. I think that's a great lesson. And also teach us how instead become a consumer, be a creator, create things instead of just consume things. When you create things, you don't need so much material world to define yourself. And I think it's really inspiring what you do. And I hope we can all join you to do something together. We all live in different cities. Every city have homeless problem. And we all thinking our own ways to resolve that. And we try to do something with the design. After we had that meeting, a lot of people want to do something, but how we can be more organized, share our ideas, share our action plan. Maybe we can do something across the world, the country, with the similar effort and get feedback to each other. I think then we not just stay in ideas, we can also do more actions, and really look forward to it.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Jing. Up next, I have Sheree Kant.
Well, Tim, thank you so much. Thank you so much. It was just wonderful.
You're very welcome.
Talk. In our life consists of time. So time is the primary resource we have. So in that sense, you're very rich, because you have your time. The currency that we have, the spiritual currency, the conscious currency is attention, what we pay attention to. You're able to pay attention to what really matters. So, and if you look at our modern civilization, all of us are actually better off than Louis XIV, even at the poverty level. When you look at the long lives we live and what we have, it is, it's amazing. So I think by focusing on your spirit, your values, choosing to pay attention to things that you care about, and spending your precious time, which is spending your life, on exactly what you want to do, that is the most extravagant use of life imaginable. What happens is that in modern times, people have become very fragmented. They get attached to concrete things just because other people value it. It's not that they actually value it from the core of their being, and they run their lives by expectations of other people. Going back to the core, going back to the spirit, being authentic is something that was common when you look at the Bhagavad Gita tradition or the Bible tradition or the Tao tradition during the axial age. That was what was meant by self-knowledge or love or morality. And the modern times has lost it. And in some way, art, by combining the physical with the spiritual, by bringing the spiritual or melding spiritual into the physical and in the body and in the being of the person, makes that integrated reality come alive. So just, kudos to you for doing what you're doing. Thank you very much. It was an honor to have you here.
Oh, that was beautiful. Thank you so much for that. That was really something.
Oh, and one thing I forgot to mention, I know there's a lot of people that are new here. Just to say that Sheree Kant is the creator of this platform called 52 Living Ideas. And I've been participating for, I guess now 2 years, almost 2 years. And so I just wanted to just kind of thank him for providing this platform for all of us to get together from all different parts of the country. So just wanted to say thank you to Sheree Kant for being here. And up next, I have Michael.
So my takeaway is that value is found in community, not things.
Beautiful.
And I'm just going to say thank you, Tim. I mean, the sculptures are just absolutely mind-blowing that you've done. I looked at them. I had the privilege of having the preview, and I tell you, like, everyone moves me in a way that I can't even describe in words. It just kind of had an emotional response to it and a spiritual connection to it. And I can't explain in words why, but I got a feeling of, for example, with the Age of Aquarius sculpture, like the older woman pouring into the young man is just beautiful. And I guess maybe because I'm an Aquarius too, but it connected to me on the spiritual level, which is hard to articulate. But I think that's because of what you put into your pieces. So thank you so much for the work that you are putting out into the world.
Well, thank you. And I have to say that part of the power of art is that it's not contained in the thing that I do. I put out an image, and if you find that kind of meaning in it, it's because you have a soul that is big enough to resonate with the image. And this happens with any artwork, that if you respond to the beauty of Shakespeare or Rodin or something, it's because the resonating chamber of your own soul is so expansive that it can bring alive this whole idea. So thank you for participating in that and making the art come alive, Evangelique.
You're welcome. Up next, I have Rose, followed by Laura.
Designing your life is something I've actually been thinking about in my own life, and how I can design my life, a life that looks like me, instead of, just following what the larger culture and social constructs have told me, like what my life should look like. So I think it takes a lot of courage to be an outlier, to define your own values, to look to yourself, to see what is your highest value within yourself, not based on social and economic constructs that we've kind of inherited, but like something that's more beyond that, that's more fulfilling, that's a higher power. And I think just thank you for showing us the example that it could be done, that I'm sure it's not easy. Sometimes it could be like a lonely road to travel on when you're the one that's doing that, and a lot of people kind of like judge and look at you funny and say, why would you give up a life of luxury to live like that? But I think you have a higher understanding of what actually matters, and how like material things over time, just the accumulation of material things for the sake of their accumulation can like fade over time. That's not true joy. True joy is like what was discussed, which is time, affluence, community, and giving value back to people and adding value to those around us. So yeah, that's my takeaway. Thank you.
You bet. And that reminds me that one of the things Carl Jung said is the hardest thing for anybody to do is to declare their individuality. Because of course, the culture wants us to be just like everybody else. So you're normal if you're like everybody else. So it takes a lot of courage just to declare how you are different from everybody else. And that's the same thing as unfolding what is unique about your own spirit. So I think that's really beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you, Rose. Up next, I have Laura.
Well, I've been using my art as a means of defining who I am. I've had to go through that process, and it's been pretty phenomenal in many ways. But I think listening to you, I think I'm just teetering on the edge of being able to enter this new domain with a much more intensity, in the sense of a meaning that I can bring to the larger, I don't even know how to say it. I think my art, I should have some sense of legacy. It should do something more important than just what it does for me personally. And I think maybe I'm coming to that realization that maybe my work can begin to tap into that a little bit. And I thank you for everything you said tonight. That gives me the inspiration to maybe get there. And maybe if I can talk to you sometime, I'd really appreciate it.
Yeah, you betcha. Anytime.
Okay.
Thank you, Laura.
All right. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else have anything they want to say? If not, we will go to Shrikant, and he wants to talk about a meetup that is happening on Sunday. I'm not quite sure. I've joined it, but I'm not too familiar with Bucky. So Shrikant, take it away. Educate us.
Thank you. Thank you. So we are launching probably the most ambitious series that we have launched so far. And that is on the work of Buckminster Fuller. It's not ambitious because of the topic, because we have dealt with topics like Bhagavad Gita, Gospel of John, which are incredibly deep, design way. What is special about this series is that we are getting the top scholars and aficionados of Buckminster Fuller's work to join us. We'll probably get maybe half a dozen to dozen people during each of the weekly meetups. And they will be talking about use of Buckminster Fuller's ideas in our lives, as a tool for changing the world. This is part of C.J. Fernley's project about collaborating for comprehensivity. And Buckminster Fuller is one of the greatest comprehensivist thinkers, like Leonardo, that I have come across. So please join us. We are launching it this Sunday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. The link is in the chat. What we're going to start off with is a series of panel discussions on Buckminster Fuller's ideas. So I'm going to ask people who have been studying Buckminster Fuller for decades what they think are the greatest ideas of Buckminster Fuller. And we will start with that. Next 4 weeks, we're going to take a break for Thanksgiving. But there will be 4 meetups this year on panel discussions with Buckminster Fuller experts. And next year, all year, we are going to do a series of presentations based on Bucky's ideas. Each month, we're going to have 4 kinds of meetup for 4 weeks. First, we are going to be studying one of his most accessible books and most profound books called The Critical Path. One of the meetups is going to be on panel discussions, and 2 meetups will be presentations by Buckminster Fuller scholars and practitioners on their work and how it can help you make your life better. So that's what this series is about, and we are launching it this Sunday. And this is actually a brainchild of C.J. Fernley, but Joe, and Maritza are going to be quarterbacking this. So please join us. I want to say thanks again to Tim, and I'm going to hand it back to Evanique. Evanique, go ahead.
Thank you, Shrikant. I'm looking forward to it. And I'm going to leave it to Jing. She is the one that invited Tim. And thank you, Jing, for doing this and for organizing this. So I'm going to let you have the last word.
Yes, thank you, Emily. So I actually want to share one of the PowerPoint from last week. Actually, can you guys see it? We actually talk about 4 levels of why. And I think I'm very glad to find Tim exactly showed us level 4, the purpose. So there's level 1, survival, level 2 is status, level 3 is freedom, Level 4 is purpose. At the time I'm doing the presentation, I mentioned, to me at the point is the freedom is most valuable thing in my life. And I wish I can, one day I'll find my purpose. And I think today's team's presentation really shows to him, purpose is what his why, and he really lives through it. So I'm very glad he really showed us the example of level 4, level 4 why. And we can see the status actually is the second level, just above survival. So I just want to show that, and I want to thank Tim for such a great evening and share your wisdom and your life. It's just precious. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. I'm really impressed with the quality of this group. It's really astonishing to see a group of people like this with such beautiful values. I just am really moved by that. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. And everyone, have a wonderful weekend. Have a great night. Tim, I am so honored for you to be here. Thank you so much. Have a great night, everyone.
All right,
Bye.
take care.
Bye.
Take care,
Bye.
Tim.
Bye.